At the first place, of course, the GEBE is actually still a topic in our community. At first, as you know, I have requested the RAC BTP to proceed with a investigation to see if we can get a good overview and recommendations to see how we can intervene and mitigate the high invoices that we are receiving for energy and water consumption, especially the consumption of energy. The RAC and BTP came with a report of 40 pages, as I have discussed already, with some recommendations in a way to see how we can mitigate the high price of energy for the people of St. Martin that are really at this particular moment in a challenging situation. After receiving the report, I have directed a letter to the GEBE in which I presented the recommendations of the RAC BTP. They, in the meantime, have received these recommendations. As shareholder, we completely realize the challenges of the people of St. Martin, and we also, as government, would like to see some relief for the people of this country. GB is in actually some disagreement with the proposals of this report. As you can recall, I even mentioned that there was a proposal in that report for a reduction of the energy price to about 6 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour. But GEBE is not completely in agreement with that proposal that I mentioned in my letter to them as a recommendation for the mitigation of the high energy prices. And this agreement is actually based on the fact that they are realizing the vulnerable financial status of the company. So on the one side, we have the people in the challenging situation of the situation that they're in, the social economic status of the people of our country. And on the other side, the board realizes the vulnerable financial status that the company is in. That does not mean that this Prime Minister and this government is giving up on this, although some reluctancy on our proposal. We had already 2 meetings after presenting my letter to them with the conclusion of the RAC BTP, and we are in full deliberation with each other, because we strongly believe that something must happen in the reduction in the tariffs for energy that the people of St. Martin are encountering. GB said also that they didn't get a full hold and understanding how the RAC BTP came to that specific conclusion of the 6 to 7 cents, and they decided to do their own investigation of what the RAC BTP did. They want to do their own analysis parallel to what the government had requested RAC BTP to do, realizing actually that BTP is actually the authorized entity to have a saying in the regulation of the prices of energy consumption. So I immediately reacted also with a letter to the supervisory board of GEBE, for them to inform me immediately about the outcome of their report, of the analysis of how they come to the conclusion that the end conclusion of the RAC BTP was not completely correct. Of course, I'm very curious to know the outcome, the conclusions of their own investigation that they are busy with, and I requested already for them to immediately inform me about their report. That's one. We are still in full open discussion with good understanding with GEBE, realizing though that there is some discrepancy in interpretation of the report and that they want to do their own report analysis of the tariffs. But we are continuing deliberation because as a prime minister and this government especially really believes and understands the challenges of the people of St. Martin. And as of day one, I committed to the people that I will do my utmost best to give the necessary relief, realizing the challenges that our people are going through at this particular moment. Secondly, I have realized in Parliament that members of Parliament were constantly coming up with a statement about a double taxation on the fuel transactions that are taking place on the island, and that it's with conviction they sold it to the people that there is a double taxation and something should be done there to get some gain to actually use it for the reduction of the energy price that the citizens are encountering. Of course, we did, and I did, the necessary investigation, and it's completely not true what the member of parliament or members of parliament are suggesting. And I will explain that. In the law, there is a TOT, a turnover tax, from, for example, Sol, that is going to sell the fuel to gas stations. In the Landsverordening, the national ordinance, stands indeed that if Sol sells to gas stations, there is a TOT that Sol has to contribute to by that sale momentum. Once the gas station receives that fuel and sells it to the consumers, the gas station also has to pay a TOT on that transaction, and that is the double transaction that the members or member of parliament is constantly hammering on. But for the same, in the law stands that there is an exemption on the TOT once Sol sells the fuel to GEBE for energy generation. So there is no TOT in the transaction of selling the fuel to GEBE for energy production for the country. So that double TOT statement constantly made in Parliament is not applicable for the fuel that is being sold to GEB for energy consumption. With this explanation, I hope that this discussion can come to a rest now, because it's, of course, I hoped that the member of parliament was right, because I would then immediately do something with this TOT to give the alleviation necessary to the consumers. But unfortunately, it's a misinterpretation of the member of parliament. This double taxation is for the fuel consumption at the gas station, but it is not the fuel that follows the route to GB for energy production for the community. So I hope with this explanation, this discussion is out of the world.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah. Your social and health insurances.
24/7 TV programming on www.stmartinmediacenter.com, SXM Daily News, PBS NewsHour, Now You Know, Com programs, documentary, entertainment, sports events, Saturday children's hours, religion programs, and movies. Click on SXM TV broadcast to see your favorite programs.
The mission of the Ministry of Justice is clear: to uphold the rule of law, ensure public safety, and protect the fundamental rights of every person on this island. Over the past months, we've been focused on laying the foundation for long-term change, strengthening our institutions, modernizing outdated systems, and addressing deep-rooted challenges across the justice chain. That mission takes on a special meaning today as we join the international community in observing World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. This year's theme, Human Trafficking is Organized Crime and the Exploitation, reminds us that this is not just an individual crime. It is a coordinated, well-financed, and deeply rooted operation driven by criminal networks that thrive on vulnerability and on silence. Here in St. Martin, we're not immune. Our open borders, our busy tourism economy, and constant movement of people create an environment that traffickers seek to exploit. Human trafficking often hides in plain sight through forced labor, sexual exploitation, coerced criminal activity, and increasingly in digital spaces where victims are lured and controlled online. We have seen signs of this here at home, and this is not just a global issue, it's also a local one. This is why awareness, vigilance, and community responsibility are essential to ending exploitation. Earlier this year, we launched the See Something, Say Something campaign. It was designed to empower every resident to speak up when something doesn't feel right. If you suspect that somebody is being trafficked or being exploited, please take action. You can call 9300, or you can visit our website, which is www.nrc.sx, to report or learn what the signs of this can be. So again, that number is 9300, and the website is www.nrc.sx. Your voice could be the one that helps save somebody's life. At the ministry, we're doing more than just raising awareness. We're aligning our policies and partnerships to respond to trafficking as the organized crime that it is. We're strengthening our law enforcement capacity through training, interagency coordination, and planned investments in specialized units. We're actively improving immigration enforcement, we're modernizing our border security systems, and we are working closely with our French counterparts, our kingdom partners, but more importantly also our regional partners in the neighboring islands. With them, we share intelligence and we carry out joint operations. As the UNODC reminds us, criminal networks do not respect borders, so neither can our response. We're also expanding our rehabilitation and reintegration framework because survivors of trafficking, especially those that are forced into criminal activities, must be treated not as victims rather than as perpetrators. Still, enforcement is only part of the picture. Prevention is just as critical. This is why I want to speak directly to our community organizations, especially those working with the youth, vulnerable populations, and in crime prevention. The ministry is encouraging you to submit proposals to our Crime Prevention Fund. This fund exists to support the work that's already happening in our community. If your organization is reaching at-risk groups, mentoring young people, or helping to create safer spaces to help prevent crime, then please, we would love to partner with you. A safer St. Martin will not be created by legislation alone. It must be built through fair laws, strong institutions, trained professionals, engaged communities, and a justice system that protects survivors and holds traffickers accountable. The ministry, through the St. Martin Police Force, has intensified island-wide safety and crime prevention controls as part of our broader strategy to tackle the recent rise in armed robberies and drug-related offenses. These efforts are not isolated. They are aligned with the ministry's commitment to strengthening the overall public safety and enforcing the rule of law. Between July 25th and 27th, more than 40 vehicles were stopped and checked at key locations across the island. These controls resulted in several fines for traffic and criminal violations, the confiscation of narcotics, and at least one instance that now requires further investigation by the police. These actions reflect our clear and deliberate zero-tolerance stance. These controls are ongoing, and they're part of our mission to create safer communities and restore public trust. Proactive enforcement will continue across St. Martin, and the public is urged to cooperate, remain alert, and report suspicious activity. The safety of our communities is not negotiable, and our enforcement will reflect that. I want to end by saying that on this day of awareness and action, let us keep in mind that crime, specifically human trafficking, is not isolated. It's organized, it's complex, it's violent, and it thrives on systems that are weak. So that is why we're strengthening our systems, investing in prevention, and asking you, our community, to stay engaged and cooperate with law enforcement. Let's protect those who cannot protect themselves. Let's confront exploitation wherever it hides. Let's work together to ensure that in St. Martin, nobody is invisible and that nobody is left behind. Again, if you see something, say something. So I think maybe I'll go back to the initial question regarding the IMA and the request for VKS and kind of the background of where that came from. And there was also a press release to this effect a while back when we had a joint meeting that was requested by the Indian Merchants Association that I held with the CPO from Front Street, along with the Chief of Police and representatives of the IMA. And within that conversation, we had made agreements to reestablish the police substation that was located on the Captain Hodge Wharf. So that is ongoing presently. And as we all know, after Hurricane Irma, that space was badly damaged, and it's not actually property of the government. It's actually property of the port. And the port has now agreed, to make the necessary repairs to that space. So as a result of that, then the CPO from Phillipsburg will return back into there instead of being in the police station where they are now. And then as part of that discussion, the IMA had also indicated that they would like to see some type of VKS presence within town as well. As a response to that, the Ministry of Justice indicated that the Minister of Justice doesn't have any say regarding VKS, and that would be a discussion that would have to be held, with the Prime Minister. And as the Prime Minister just said, we're planning to have kind of a meeting with multiple stakeholders to see what is possible, because again, the VKS is also quite limited in their manpower currently. We see it at the prison and the assistance that they give us there. Their assistance isn't free, as the PM also noted. And of course, many VKS officers have day jobs. They have other jobs during the day. So that's why I think it's very important for us to have that meeting and to really see what is possible. And as the Prime Minister noted, this came out of a discussion that we had yesterday. Yes, we do see a rise in crime around the island. I asked the police yesterday to make an overview, kind of a historical overview, not just of robberies with the use of force or with weapons, but also just crime in general, so that we can have a forecast and look back and see, okay, over the past 5 years, what are we seeing? I think oftentimes, we've gone through periods, especially in Front Street, where there's always ebbs and flows, where there's times where we see a lot happening and then it gets very quiet for a while. And then suddenly a year after, you'll see little peaks and drops. And in that, one of the discussions that we continue to have with business owners, regardless if you're in Front Street or somewhere else, because we see, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, what can happen in other parts of this island as well with the robbery that happened at Simpson Bay Resorts. It's important that businesses also take their own security into their hands. It's not the responsibility of the government to, of course, we have a public order or responsibility, but we also encourage businesses to do what they can to ensure their safety and security as well. We've had the conversations very often about security doors, especially where you have highly valuable goods, within your store. We've seen some of the stores now have those security doors where you can buzz in and out. If you go to Goldfinger on the front side, you have that double door as well. So these are the measures that we also encourage. And we also see sometimes quite reckless behavior from store owners as well, where we see them trying to attack people coming into their stores. Again, your life is not worth the merchandise that's in your store. So again, we really urge everybody to continue to see how they can contribute to their own safety and security. I also want to really take the moment as well to really commend the police, because right now we have a very high success rate when it comes to catching and apprehending the perpetrators in these crimes. So maybe right now, of course, it's difficult for us to stop crime completely on this island. I would love for there to be absolutely no crime, but that would be us living in a utopia. But what is great for us to see is that more in the majority of these cases, we are apprehending the perpetrators and we are bringing them to justice. And it's important for us that we continue to do this. I understand that we have capacity issues with the prison. Of course, we have our new prison coming, and we're doing what we can within the constraints that we have. But I think it's important, and I talked about enforcement before this, and I've continued to say I want St. Martin to be a place again where we feel safe to live, where we feel safe to walk on the street, where we feel safe to do business, because a good place to live is a good place to vacation. And our residents, I think, need to come first in many instances. And we will continue to enforce, and we will continue to hold people accountable if they break the law. We can't continue in a land of lawlessness. And I think that we're taking steps, and we're doing very well to show that zero tolerance, and we will not tolerate anybody who comes here and thinks that they can break our laws, whether they're from neighboring islands or they're from our own neighborhoods right here. And I think that that's where we talked about having a lot to do as a community, when I think, we also, it's our values. And, it really hurts me when I see our own people committing some of these crimes. And I know that that's a social issue that we also need to deal with. And as the Ministry of Justice, we're doing what we can to, when it comes to crime prevention and investing back into the community. And again, I'll go back to my statement before about really wanting to fund projects through the Crime Prevention Fund, and looking forward to receiving some. We have some upcoming meetings now where we're looking at programs for schools or after-school activities that we're working with a couple different foundations to see how we can get some well-formed proposals off the ground to then help our youth and keep them off the street.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah. Your social health insurances.
24/7 TV programming on www.stmartinmediacenter.com, SXM Daily News, PBS NewsHour, Now You Know, com programs, documentary, entertainment, sports events, Saturday children's hours, religion programs, and movies. Click on SXM TV broadcast to see your favorite programs.
A huge earthquake, one of the strongest recorded in modern history, has triggered tsunami warnings across large parts of the Pacific. The 8.8 magnitude quake struck off the coast of far eastern Russia. There are warnings of aftershocks and waves of up to 4 meters reported there. It also sparked tsunami warnings of varying levels across much of the world. The highest warning levels were in place in Hawaii and also across most of Japan. They have now been downgraded. There have also been alerts and warnings of differing levels across the Pacific. Alaska, the west coast of America, Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, Indonesia, the Philippines, Guam, the Galapagos, Micronesia, Taiwan, even New Zealand. Many have now been downgraded. Well, let's have a look at how the situation unfolded. The earthquake struck off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula at 1:27 p.m. local time, nearly 2:30 in the morning here in the UK. People in the region immediately began sharing videos of themselves as their buildings shook. The region's governor called for people to remain calm. The earthquake, one of the most powerful ever recorded, caused some building damage in Kamchatka, but there have been no reports of anyone being killed. And no one was in this kindergarten you can see here at the time of the quake. Within hours, the tsunami began rolling in the nearby Sakhalin region. Houses on the coastline were flooded. Buildings across the coast were swamped by the incoming tide. And across the Pacific, people began receiving alerts on their mobile phones, urging them to get to higher ground, including this one, live on BBC News.
I would say that a lot of the people that, sorry, we have a siren going off now.
Well, as the tsunami warning spread, people in Japan, where memories of the 2011 Fukushima earthquake and tsunami are still fresh, were seen taking shelter on the top of buildings, away from the threat of any waves. Almost 2 million people were under evacuation orders. Japan now has downgraded its tsunami alerts for much of the country. And in Hawaii, people were caught up in the traffic as they tried to obey directives to get to higher ground. The warning there has also been downgraded to an alert. Some people have been told they can head home. The US mainland is the latest to have been impacted. Waves of up to a metre above tidal levels have also been recorded in Northern California. That's in the last few hours. But no major damage has been reported. Well, the area affected by the tsunami across Japan is absolutely vast. We are currently at the mid-level of the country's alert system. Our Japan correspondent Shaima Khalil says waves could hit suddenly as high as 3 metres.
Dozens of waves have hit Japan's Pacific coast. And the reason why so many people have been affected by the evacuation order, nearly 2 million people, as you've mentioned, is because it covers a huge area of that coast, from Hokkaido in the northeast to Wakayama in the southwest. So a big area, really, where we've seen train lines in that coastal area have stopped. We've seen a Sendai airport, a coastal airport that has been closed, grounding 21 planes, affecting 2,000 people. But mainly the main advice still remains, which is even if we have these waves that have hit the coastal as high as 1.3 meters, as you say, they could go as high as to 3 meters, and they could hit suddenly. That's the message from the meteorological agency as they try to continue to assess how high these waves are, how hard they're going to hit, and which areas as well.
That's the situation in Japan. Let's speak now to Kim Hutchinson, a data scientist at the National Tsunami Warning Center in Alaska. Kim, good to see you. A huge amount of data, I'm sure, coming into you at the moment. Can you just give us an update of where we're at this very moment when it comes to the tsunami across the Pacific?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me. Currently, we are seeing water levels hitting the United States West Coast, so Alaska, Oregon, California. And we're seeing them mostly in the level between 0.3 meters to 1 meter. And that's what we call an advisory here. So that's when we worry about coastlines and harbors having damage, but we're not necessarily worried about the tsunami flooding onto shore.
So what's your advice to people in those areas, Kim?
Stay away from the beaches. Today's not the day to go suntanning. And stay away from the harbors. Tsunamis can last a long time, and this one is still hitting.
Is there a concern about aftershocks, Kim?
Aftershocks are a common part of earthquakes. This was a really large earthquake, though. All I can say is we're here, we're prepared, we're a 24-hour center, and if it happens, we'll be ready.
Can you explain to us what actually happened after the earthquake with the Pacific Ocean? What effect did it have?
Yeah, so you can think of the ocean almost like water in a bathtub. Imagine you slip your hand to the bottom of that bathtub and push it up really suddenly. That water is going to move in all directions and it's going to start sloshing over the sides. And it's not just one wave, it's a series of waves. And often the first one is not the largest. So that's what happened to our ocean. And our ocean is many kilometers deep and incredibly wide. So that much water being displaced is really powerful and really damaging.
It's a huge amount of water, Kim. What is the impact potentially of this in terms of the coming hours and the coming days?
For now, we are pretty lucky, and in the United States West Coast, we are looking at mostly less than 1 meter of water, which again means damages to coastlines and harbors, but luckily not much inundation on land. The only part that we still have in a warning, which is potentially over 1 meter of water, where we do start worrying about water flooding onto land, is a small portion of Northern California. And we're hoping that as we get more water data, we can start to downgrade.
Yeah, Kim, I did hear a few hours ago, though, that there are concerns that this can sometimes last a couple of days. That was a real concern in Japan as well. Has that gone away, that worry?
No, this is an event that can last many more hours.
And possibly days as well, do you think?
Potentially, it's really hard to say
Of
at this
course.
point. Hopefully not.
And what about the advisory warning systems, Kim? Have they all been quite successful? Are people happy with how the alerts have gone out this time?
I hope so. To be honest, we're still getting inundated with earthquake information, water information. We're doing all the science, and that's what we're working off of. I can only hope that it went smoothly for the American public.
And where does all your data come from?
Most of it comes from coastal tide gauges that is run by the National Data Buoy Center here from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States. We also have things called DARTs, which are out in the deep ocean that are incredible tools to help us detect tsunamis. And that DART stands for Deep Ocean Assessment and Recording of Tsunamis. And we use those in this event, multiple ones, to help us downgrade and determine what the level of danger was to the United States West Coast hours before the wave hit.
Kim, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for explaining that all so clearly to us. I can bring you an update that we've just been receiving from Russian authorities, actually. We know that this earthquake struck the Kamchatka Peninsula, I was telling you earlier, at about 1:27 p.m. local time. We have some pictures for you here from that region of Russia. We are just hearing from the authorities that they have lifted their tsunami warning for the Far East Kamchatka region as well. So the earthquake had this initial damage that we're seeing, some building damage there. No one killed, though, luckily, and there were some houses that were flooded. But the actual tsunami warning for this region has now been lifted, we understand.